welcome. Thanks for joining us. May the Holy Spirit work in your life as you hear this message. All right. So we're headed into Thanksgiving this week. It's a time of family gatherings and gatherings around with people we love, and I for one love family dinners. I really enjoy them. You know, family, friends, loved ones all gathered around a table, and tons of tasty food and conversations that bring laughter and a sense of closeness and belonging. I remember when I was in college in Los Angeles, the only family I had lived in San Francisco. And so every Thanksgiving, I would get on a bus and ride for 8 hours to San Francisco just to be with my family for the weekend. And it was just such a wonderful time to just be reunited with people you love, right? Amen. But family dinners can also bring up some painful memories. And so one year, while visiting that very same family in San Francisco, I sat at dinner listening to two brothers, my cousins, argue about something. I don't even know what it was. And so the elder brother, who had recently moved out on his own, was counseling his younger brother about this, that, or the other thing. And my uncle, their father, normally a jovial, patient man, grew irritated at whatever the older brother was saying. Apparently, my uncle didn't think much of his eldest son moving out. But I also suspect that it may have had something to do with his eldest son complaining that the meat was dry and tasteless. And he went on about that for quite some time. And my uncle loves to cook, so I have a feeling that he didn't take kindly to what his son was saying. Anyway, the disagreement dragged on, and finally my uncle said to his eldest son, "Well, you don't live here anymore, so you're not a member of this family anyway." See, I thought it was a joke, but apparently not. My cousin sat there stunned. He must have been all about 19 or 20 back then. But he took it graciously. He thanked his parents for the food and said goodnight and walked out the door. I watched him through the window as he drove away. And I don't remember seeing him again on that visit. It's amazing how one sentence, one word, can tear away at the sense of belonging in another person. One dismissive remark, one pointed criticism, one heated exchange, especially from somebody in authority, can drive others far, far away. And that hurt can last lifetimes, generations. We'll read about this in our Bible story. But first, let's think about the time we're in right now. See, we're about to enter a season in which we, as followers of Christ, traditionally proclaim peace on earth, goodwill toward men. God bless us, everyone. We celebrate the arrival of the Prince of Peace. And so this is a holy, a friendly, a loving time. It's a time of extra hours in church and gathering with family and celebrating with co-workers and friends. And yet, some of us may dread the conversations that take place at our various gatherings. I remember one time hearing a story about a faithful, theologically adept, church-going guy whose daughter was convinced that he was not saved because he went to a different church. He was a Methodist, and she was something else. So holidays weren't much fun for him. Or we might have people in our lives that we don't want to see at family gatherings. Or some of us may mourn in isolation or loneliness because we feel rejected or abandoned. Because in some crucial way, someone has told us that we do not belong. But friends, in Jesus Christ, we all belong to God. We are loved. We have a place at God's table, no matter what anyone else says. We are members of God's family, and no one can take that from us. Now, this month, we are leading up to our journey through the Gospel according to Matthew, starting on Christmas Eve. But we actually began a few weeks ago with Matthew's genealogy of Jesus. And so now we're highlighting some of the people on his family tree. Last week, Reverend Nancy Wood began with Abraham and his call from God to leave his home and family in Ur and venture to a land where he would father a great nation. And of course, we could spend an entire summer, maybe even an entire year, traveling with Abraham and Sarah and remembering all of their adventures and misadventures and their gains and their losses and their celebrations. I mean, they have an awesome life story. But one episode in Abraham's experience highlights God's expansive love and care. Love that runs beyond our familial ties, and certainly beyond our jealousies and meanness. And that is the story of Hagar and her son Ishmael. Let's now open our Bibles and turn to Genesis chapter 21, verse 9. You can use the pew Bibles in front of you, or the phones, the apps on your phones, or the Bibles that you brought with you. Now, as Nancy pointed out last week, Abraham and Sarah begin their journey as an older, childless couple. And God promises that they will have a child together, but at some point Sarah insists that Abraham father a child with an Egyptian slave named Hagar. Well, along comes Ishmael, but then sometime after, Sarah herself has a son named Isaac. One big happy family, right? And maybe not. Let's read the book of Genesis, chapter 21, verses 9 through 19. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, playing with her son Isaac. So she said to Abraham, "Cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not inherit along with my son Isaac." The matter was very distressing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, "Do not be distressed because of the boy and because of your slave woman, for whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you. For it is through Isaac that offspring shall be named for you. As for the son of the slave woman, I will make a nation of him also, because he is your offspring." So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder along with the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she cast the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot, for she said, "Do not let me look on the death of the child." And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What troubles you, Hagar? Do not be afraid, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Come, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make a great nation of him." Then he opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. She went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. Now, friends, this, for me, is one of the most heartbreaking stories in the Bible. I find it hard to wrap my head around spiritually justifying the heartless banishment of a mother and her child out into the wilderness. The Apostle Paul, in his epistle to the Galatians, writes that this is an allegory, contrasting those born to the slavery of the flesh, Hagar, and those born to freedom in the spirit, Sarah. And our own John Wesley suggests that when Ishmael mocks Isaac, he rejects or persecutes the gospel and so receives punishment. See, if you've noticed, our New Revised Standard Version translates the word zachak as to play with. But see, the King James Version, which Wesley quotes, translates it as to mock or to make sport of or to jest. So think about this, because this is very, very important. The banishment of a woman and her child into the wilderness hinges on a word with several meanings: to play with, or to jest, or to mock. What did Sarah see that day? Two boys playing? Or did she see Abraham's eldest son, Ishmael, standing to inherit Abraham's estate? Let's ask ourselves this. Why did the parents not give Ishmael a chance to apologize? Why punish the mother and the child with such cold severity, with starvation and thirst in the desert? And even, and this came to me in the shower this morning, even if Abraham had to send Hagar and Ishmael away, why did he not send someone with her? Why did he not make sure that she landed safely in another place? Why did he not provide for her more than just a skin of water and a loaf of bread? Friends, we can spiritualize this all we want. Child of promise, child of the flesh. But here's the biblical reality of it. This choice right here, based on a single, possibly vague word with several meanings, this response to a childish act, creates a separation, an enmity that persists for generations. Later on in Genesis, when Isaac's grandsons out of sheer jealousy throw their brother Joseph into a pit and leave him for dead, the Ishmaelites come along, buy him as a slave, and then drag him down to Egypt. And eventually, as written in the 83rd Psalm, the descendants of Ishmael, the ones whom Abraham and Sarah cast out, line up with all the other enemies of Israel, seeking the destruction of the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Friends, as I see it, this is an enmity that did not have to happen. Now, those of you who have heard me preach for a while know that in my early years, I was a little down on Christmas. You know, the commercialism of it all and all of that. But doesn't it sound like I'm a little down on Christmas right now? I mean, what is this? Family rivalry, siblings hating each other, enmity, punishment, starvation. Dude, it's Christmas. Lighten up, Pastor. I mean, this is a holy time, isn't it? Yes, it is a holy time. And because we are entering an especially holy time, we might want to think about a little advice that Jesus offers us in the Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 5, verse 21. You have heard it that it was said to those of ancient times, you shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, you fool, you will be liable to the hell of fire. So when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First, be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. Whatever it is that we think we're doing in here, coming to church, putting on concerts, ringing bells, hanging greens, singing carols, none of this means a whole lot if we are not doing what Jesus says by loving our neighbor the other 6 days of the week. This doesn't mean a whole lot if we are not offering forgiveness or asking for forgiveness. So before we damage or sever a relationship with a harsh word, let's ask ourselves, have I missed a word here? Have I misunderstood something about our conversation? Have I created misunderstanding? Can I see things from the perspective of the other? Am I acting out of concern for the well-being of my neighbor, my friends, my family, my coworkers? Or am I acting mainly out of selfish interest? Reconciling a relationship, making a friend out of an enemy can transform a life. Forgiveness can transform a civilization. It can change the course of history. And if we are the ones cast out by those closest to us, rejected by our circles, let's remember that Hagar and Ishmael eventually form a nation of their own. God's promises extend beyond the limits of our immediate relationships or our loyalties. Of Ishmael's nation, Wesley writes, the casting out of Ishmael was not his ruin. It is presumption to say that all these who are left out of the external dispensation of God's covenant are excluded from all his mercies. Friends, if someone has presumed or declared in any way that we are not children of God, that we are not saved, because of our differences in doctrines or interpretation, we can have faith that God's care and love and provision and vision applies to Ishmael as well as to Isaac. Why won't we see that? In the 25th chapter of Genesis, we find a verse that seems overlooked by so many when we remember the story of Isaac and Ishmael. Abraham passes away, and the two brothers bury their father together. And of this scene, Wesley writes, "Some distance there had formerly been between Isaac and Ishmael, but it seems either Abraham had himself brought them together while he lived, or at least his death reconciled them." Friends, this is a season of peace on earth and goodwill to all. And we have an opportunity in this season to at least take baby steps towards healing whatever broken relationships we may have. We have biblical stories that recount over and over and over again the pain and anguish of human separation. But we also have stories that recount the joy, the ecstasy, the comfort that comes when all God's children reconcile. And so in this time of proclaiming God's ultimate peace in Jesus Christ, if there is need, let's create peace among family, friends, and foe. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with us. Thanks for joining us. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share our video. Let's send God's love all over the world. If you find yourself in Jensen Beach, Florida, please join us for worship. Our services are at 9:15 and 11. And if you'd like to find out more, please visit www.trinityjb.org. See you next time. Blessings.